Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest this week is Kevin Akeroyd, a veteran tech CEO with a career that spans Fortune 500 giants, private equity powerhouses, and venture-backed disruptors. He's currently leading Sovos, a PE-backed tax and compliance AI SaaS platform. Now, before that, Kevin was CEO of Magna Global, the world's largest contingent workforce technology provider. And prior to that, he took Cision public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2017 as its CEO. Early in his career, he held president-level roles at both Oracle and Salesforce, and before that drove 4 successful exits at VC-backed startups. Outside of the boardroom, he's a father of 5 and a sports, music, wine, and travel enthusiast. And finally, Kevin studied at both Stanford Graduate School of Business and the University of Washington. And before I bring him on, he's also a dear friend. He's a mentor. He's a fellow sports nut. I had the pleasure of working with him and for him at Oracle. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Gosh, I guess you explained all this gray hair, what little is left of it, pretty well. Thanks, bud.
What are friends for?
I got big time therapy bills to prove that everything you just said is true.
Well, maybe we'll save that for part 2. Listen, I can't wait. For those who don't know Kevin, I've known him for, 15 years now.
Yeah.
We're part of Oracle Marketing Cloud launch back in the day.
Yep.
And everything was going to the cloud. And I learned so much from you, but enough about that. A lot of what I want to dig in today is about leadership.
Yeah.
Because if anyone's had to lead through chaos, reinvention, and everything in between, it's you. So I want to start right up front. This might be, and you and I talked off air about this, the craziest stretch of change leaders have ever faced. Tech is blowing up everything we know. Geopolitics on fire, climate hanging over, social divides everywhere.
Yep.
Doing, quote, business as usual is a joke.
Yeah.
First question, what do leaders absolutely have to unlearn? Operative word, unlearn, if they want to survive.
I think, boy, Steve, the answer to that is pretty much everything. Hate to make it to the audience. The better question is, what do they not need to unlearn? I mean, whether it is the kind of just the accepted generational societal norms, right? Broken, gone, doesn't work. Communication norms, methodologies, broken, gone, doesn't work. Technology, right? And what they're fluent with, we're not fluent with, gone. I'm going to call it the power balance, right? There was an inherent power structure when you and I, right? We didn't question management, right? We certainly didn't, right? We didn't chafe it, right? Whether we got told to work in the office or work at home, right? Like on and on and on. And then hey, is it a buyer market, right? When you and I came out of school, for instance, right? All of the employees were just very grateful and hopeful to get a job, right? Now I think that is fundamentally shifted, and employers are having to fight, right, for the war of talent. And we as employers are a bit more of we're the buyer, and the employees are the talent's the seller now, right? So, and I won't waste a bunch of the time here, but to answer that question at a foundational level, I would tell the people that are in leadership, whether it's functional leadership, right, or general management, or all the way to the C-suite, the answer to that question is look at all of it. Don't think you have the luxury to cherry pick. Oh, I just need to change this, or I just need to change that. Nope. This is a holistic, if you want to be very, very effective, think about it holistically. Don't think about it in these component parts.
Yeah. And you and I both know that a lot of the leaders that are still in place, I'm not naming names, of course, but they're very set in their ways.
Very.
Right. And old school, pick a term. So the next, to me, the most logical next question is, what if these same leaders don't unlearn everything you just said? What do you think happens? Are they just gone?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that. Whether you look at it at a company level, you go back and pick a 20-year period. Let's go ahead and pick 2005 versus 2025. Over half the largest 1,000 companies in the world ain't on that list anymore, right? And 10% of them don't even exist anymore. So whether you want to look at it as, oh my gosh, is the enterprise that I'm running, even going to survive? You look at the overhaul in leadership, right? Whether that is executives at leaders, whether that is at the board member, right? And translate this into nonprofit and into academic and into healthcare, et cetera. The leaders themselves, they can't adapt, right? And do some of the changes we're going to talk about. There's been a huge overhaul, right? From that aspect too. And then the customer, which might be the biggest of all. And again, whether my customer is a consumer in B2C or my customer is the government in B2G, my customer is a business in B2B, the companies that have been unwilling to change have flat out won or lost customer bases, right? And the people that have been unwilling to adapt to their customers have lost big time in the eyes of the customer. And then right back to the thing we were just talking about, people that have been unwilling to change have won or lost the talent war, right? With employees.
Yeah.
And, again, stuck in my ways. I'm going to do it the same way I was doing it 20 years ago. 99% of the time means they lost that talent war. They didn't win the talent war. So I think you should look at it from all four of those angles, Steve. And the ramifications point to the same thing. You don't change, you don't win.
Yeah.
Right? I've been on the losing side of that across all four of those aspects if I've been set in my ways.
I just had this vision of, as you were talking about, and we both, because we've talked about this book, the infamous Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Yep.
And I could see, an updated or the most doing a version now and going back those 20 years you just talked about. And a common denominator among the great leaders will be those who adapted to change.
Yep.
And I know that might sound obvious, right? But it's the kind of change as opposed to the previous 20 years. There's always change, right?
100%.
It would be fascinating to look at that.
Yeah. And this is right. Innovator's dilemma, right? Good to great. What got you here doesn't get you there.
Yep.
I think this is a pretty widely accepted concept, Steve. I'm sure you agree with that. We as leaders have kind of nodded our head that, yep, I agree with that concept. Now putting into practice proactively, aggressively, and being on the fore end of that, rather than reading a book about it, nodding my head and going back and making a 10% change. That's the big difference. Is, do I embrace it? Do I get ahead of it? Do I lead with it? To really, really, really buy off and go do? Or do I read the book? Like I just said, pick one thing I'm going to change and then stay about my ways. That's a pretty fundamental difference, because it's a well documented issue. I don't think it's been one that's been put into practice very well.
No, and you and I both know the ego gets in the way.
Right. Yep.
Right, of a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
And look, even to segue into a world that you and I talk a lot about is sports world.
Yeah.
And the coaches and managers and general managers, those in the executive level, if you will, as opposed to the players, you see coaches who don't adapt to the game, the world in front of them. They're not long.
That's right. That's exactly right. I think that turnover is every bit as aggressive as it is in the corporate world, if not more. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many similarities.
Yeah. And it's for all the same reasons.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Like you're either reluctant to change, your ego gets in the way, it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yep.
All of the above, it doesn't matter. What's interesting over the past 20 years, and that what I'm about to say, the next 20, the speed we're dealing with change right now will pair in comparison.
That's right. And whether it's business leaders or sports leaders, and again, I think this translates again into everything, right? Put this at healthcare, put this at academia, put this at higher education, put this right, whatever. I mean, right. It used to be, I've got a plan, execute, right? We kind of need to build resilience, adaptability, nimbleness, flexibility, right? I use that term resilience because if I have a plan, and in sports, right, like in boxing, everybody has a plan until the first punch lands, right?
Yes.
Everybody has a plan until somebody passes 80 yards. Right over my guy and goes to the end zone in the first play. Everybody has a plan until the competition steps up and crushes them. Resilience, not plans, I think is really key across the board. I think the good leaders, right, in sports, there's got to be a communication with radical transparency, right? Whether it's the CEO sitting in their ivory tower, thou shalt, right? Communicating down, and I'll tell you what you need to know. And you don't need to know that much, right? And just do your job, right? In sports, right? Or in corporate. No. I use the term, radical transparency, right? Again, with your customer, with your partner, with your employee, with your stakeholder. These days, right? Again, whatever that term means, communication with radical transparency, and again, it's about people now, right? The player has almost as much power, if not more power than the coach, which is, boy, don't get me started on that. But the employee has more power vis-a-vis the CEO than ever before, too. Again, it's across the board. So leading with empathy, right, is just massively critical. Leading with an acknowledgement that the gap from an experience, a change, a social, technological communication style norms. So that empathy has got to be there. That psychological safety, has got to be there. And I've really kind of got to build my leadership underneath me. Right. Again, whether it's in sports or whether it's in, I kind of have those leaders at every right level. I don't just get to have my little 10 direct reports around the CEOs, right? Knights of King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table or the ELT, right? For CEO. No, who are my leaders at level 3? Who are my leaders at level 4? Who are my leaders at level 5 in sports, right? Yeah. And in business. So those are just some things that, you and I are good examples. We came up when that wasn't the case. Right. We kind of came up from the 50, 60 style when that didn't exist. We're now where we are now, and that's front and center. And we're going to just struggle to be effective leaders. We don't really not just acknowledge it, but embrace it and lead with it rather than just accept it. Right. I know I'm going to make that comment a couple more times in the cast, but it's one thing to read about it. It's a second thing to acknowledge it. The lift is to do. Right. To do and actually modify. Yeah.
The old adage of there's words and then there's actions.
That's right. Yep.
And if you keep it in that simple form, which you and I do, we keep things very simple. Yep. For a point, they go, no, don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah. Just and that kind of radical transparency and that resilience. I think there's a mindset shift there. I think as well. If I am kind of scenario planning all the time versus, hey, here's my forecast, or right, here's my forecast. How are we doing against it? Month 1, month through month 12, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Of course we need forecasts. Of course we need long-term plans. Of course we need product roadmaps. Of course we need, right? You need that. But if you are constantly scenario planning, to say, well, something's going to go wrong against that product roadmap or that sales forecast or that marketing pipeline or whatever it is, right? If I am in a constant scenario mode with an adaptive, right, mindset, I'm going to bob, weave, right, and be really, 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 reactive. And I think, lead better when the inevitable happens. I'll have my contingency plan. So I think that mindset of scenario planning instead of just forecasting, then experimenting constantly, right? And that doesn't mean, A/B testing the way we've been doing it for 40 years, to use a marketing term. That's the learn. That's the part of it. Yeah. That is an experiment. But no. Small pilots before major rollouts, right? Building in, well, you're supposed to fail 10% of the time. Otherwise, you're not trying hard enough, right? Mentality, all that stuff. And then I think change, literally creating those adaptability and change champions. Hey, it's kind of my job to be out there on the frontier, to run those scenarios, to look at those contingencies, to fail, learn from it, fail fast, iterate, get better. And again, that's non-trivial to do. But if you do that, you're going to be you'll be in a better change culture. And 2, you're going to get better results out of your team. You're going to get better results in whatever the venture is, whether it's a clinic or a sports team or a business or a nonprofit or a university. You're going to lead and just get better outcomes from your people. And whatever your P&L or whatever the charter is, it's going to work better if you take that mindset. Exactly.
I want to pivot. You've run some companies through really wild swings, right?
Yes.
When the world is like it's in chaos, how do you put out a message without sounding like every other company, doing like a we care press release, right? How do you make it authentic? Which I know sounds like to you and I, it's like, well, no shit. But we all know, we've seen so many companies who don't get it.
I do. And I think that authenticity, you just nailed the word, Steve. Our stakeholder, again, that stakeholder could be millions of consumers if I'm a big B2C brand. It could be my fans if I'm a sports club. It could be a bunch of SMBs if I'm a SMB provider. It could be large enterprises if I'm an enterprise provider, right? It could be whoever, right? It could be my patients if I'm a healthcare. It doesn't matter. Every constituent that matters to you, if you're going to be successful, not just craves authenticity, but more and more are demanding, right? Authenticity. And I think budgets are won or lost, brands are won or lost, P&Ls are won or lost based on whether you can deliver said authenticity. Because again, one of the changes that we have to deal with, right, is this massive proliferation of everybody's got all the information all the time, right? Even if you didn't want to embrace transparency, too bad, it's there anyway, right? I can find out anything about your brand, your company, your product, your solution, your people, if I want to, right? And that was exasperated enough when all the information in the world, right, was made public and searchable in the web. And now, holy smokes, I've got unlimited compute power with some pretty smart algorithms that can enhance that even more, right, with AI now. So assume that everything is transparent. And then if you message with lack of authenticity, assume that will hurt you. That's number one. Number two, be careful with authenticity though, right? Because gosh, get that wrong and the punishments are pretty severe now, right? And a lot of people would like to be authentic, but they have too much of a specific customer base or our stakeholder group that would actually be offended if you were too authentic, right? So, I mean, I hate to say it, but the art of saying it straight and saying authentic, but being careful, right? And put some rubber walls around those sharp edges, right? Be careful because again, for the same reason everything's transparent, again, social media being able to say, hey, have a board member call you and say, well, gosh, overnight I see 9,000 hits, all of which have negative sentiment, and 2,700 negative comments on LinkedIn, and There's a pretty almost real-time price to pay, right, if you get it wrong. So I think that's the second part. And unfortunately, I think that you've got to make your authenticity still compelling because our stakeholders have more choice than ever. Their attention spans are less than ever, right? Steve, remember back in the day, we used to think, hey, if that headline or that HTML block or that right tagline, we got like 10 seconds. And if we don't get them, right, they're gone. I think that's 2 seconds now, right? If that. So we have more messaging coming at the same finite set of stakeholders or customers. We have more authenticity. We have more choice, right? We have more self-selection about what I want to hear, right? So we do need to be authentic, but we need to do it in a safe way. But we still have to be in a compelling way. So, how do I be authentic, but protect my back and still be more compelling than the other guy? Oh my gosh. That means that people that do what you and I do, right? Which is like still focus on messaging, the voice, right? The message, the positioning, the branding. It might be more important than it has ever been. Not because big ad budgets with big brand budgets are more impactful, but to nail what you and I just talked about is way tougher than just spending a big ad budget. It's way more sophisticated. It's way more nuanced. It's way more segmented. And, the stakes are higher. So it ain't easy, but you kind of have to pull it off if you want to be successful.
It's a good segue into what I wanted to ask about next. You're talking about there's so many eyeballs, so much competition, which we know will never change, but it's a great segue into customer experience. Yeah. Right. Which I know you're passionate about. I'm very passionate about back to when you and I worked together at Oracle. Yep. But give us I'm going to get almost like your 30,000 foot and then we'll get granular. It's almost like I want to do the word association. If I say customer experience, what comes to mind for Kevin Akeroyd?
Impression and sentiment. Yeah. It's not a CSAT score. It's not an NPS score. It's not a survey result. Although those are helpful tools, right? It is at the early stage of a customer, right? Like, so what impression are you giving me? Right? Because they haven't had a chance to really experience your product, or your service, or your people, or your deliverable, or whatever it is. So I am in an impression game, which means I have to give you the impression that you can trust me. I have to give you an impression that I'm authentic. I have to give you the impression that you can trust me. All right. I have to give you the impression that I'm high quality. I have to give you, that I'm safe to work with, on and on and on and on and on and on. Right. So impression doesn't mean an ad impression, right? Impression means, what impression am I making on Steve, who's a sophisticated, right, well-educated, scrutinous, high standards recipient of my message, and hopefully someday recipient of my product or service? What impression? And that's not one impression. That's every single one, right? And then once you've been in the impression game the way I just defined it, so you can actually earn the right to have some customer experience because Steve is now finally a customer. Now, right? What sentiment? Right? Because I may be disappointed, right, with a particular tech support phone call that was really frustrating, right? Or a website that crashed, or a phone call that got disconnected, or right, a wire that was wrong in that consumer electronic. Right, there's millions of ways where a customer, right, could get dissatisfied. But if the sentiment is always okay, even when there's a problem, I get resolution, right? It's satisfactory, it's honest. They have the relationship with me in mind. And that means, again, just like an impression is this big aggregated thing that isn't just one point in time, but it's every single time they interact with you. Kind of the same thing, whether it's a return, whether it's the product quality, whether it's the packaging, whether it's that tech support call, whether it's the experience on the website, whether it's the live chat, whether it's an in-store experience, every touch either debits or credits the sentiment, right, that I have about your product, your company, your brand. And just like with everything, it's hard to earn the point balance up. It's easy to take that point balance down. But if you build it, right, and you put those sentiment points in the bank, then when you do have that inevitable, credit back out, the customer still thinks they have a good experience with your brand, right? So it's not a point in time, right? And it's not a fancy web package that I buy from a web content management person, and it's not a survey, and it's not it's literally every single touch point. Not that I just close the case or solve the problem or reship the return. It's, did I put credit in that sentiment bank? Because if so, I got a customer for life. If I did not, I run the risk of somebody out sentimenting me better. And I might not have even done something wrong, but it doesn't matter. I lost the customer, and they went somewhere else that did that better. So that's kind of my opinion on the topic, Steve. Yeah,
we could have a whole episode devoted to CX for sure. But one last question for you, because I know you've had a front row seat to tech and how it's reshaped CX, right? Yeah. And I want to get your thoughts on, do you see any big shift coming in CX tech that marketers aren't ready for yet, or should be? Or what are your thoughts on what's coming?
I have an opinion, Steve, if I may. Go shocking that KA has an opinion. I know. The fact that I have an opinion, just a strong opinion, surprises you immensely, right?
I'm not familiar with this, no.
Right. My first answer to that question, that I'll elaborate on it, is unfortunately, I think that CX tech is being used as a cost reduction model way too much versus actually improving CX. So, hey, I got my support call center down from 2,000 people to 200. With all this amazing tech, right? That sentiment I am destroying, right? Because when that customer has to sit there through 17, if this, then that, if this, go down this tree, right? Looks good at my cost numbers. It's horrible customer experience, right? And it's horrible customer sentiment, and it does long-term damage. So this false positive that, hey, look at this, right? Because it's all AI, it's all automated, it's all chatbot. I'm going to celebrate, my first time to response, went to under 60 seconds. It's like, well, yeah, but it was a terrible customer experience, and it degraded that sentiment bank. So don't applaud yourself for applying cutting edge technology, because it sure looked good in your cost to serve. It did you big time damage in customer experience and customer sentiment, right? And you look at that across the board, and I think we are at the, how do I make this veneer of customers experience happen at scale with lower and lower price points, right? Again, whether that's an existing customer or even cost to acquire. We're too focused on making CX more efficient and my cost per look better on the balance sheet. And I'm not saying you don't have to do that, because I'm somebody that's been running P&Ls that have been hundreds of millions or billions for a long time. And is the cost associated with CX an important factor? Yes. But in my mind, the technology has been used 90% to drive cost to deliver a minimum viable customer experience down, rather than the technology to actually drive the definition of customer experience and make it better and improve it. Does that make sense, Steve?
Totally.
It's being too much. The line is drawn too low. Now, how do I get my cost to deliver that low customer experience bar lower and lower and lower and lower? Technology has the opportunity to say, never mind, I want to take that bar up and then up again and radically improve customer experience. Most of the technologies out there, most of the applications about them are not about making customer experience better. They're about making customer experience more cost effective. And while that works in the short term, I think it hurts you in the long term. I really do.
It's definitely a fine line.
Yeah.
Right? It's a balance from the P&L line all the way down to the customer facing, right? And everywhere in between. But to me, you're right. The best leaders will not necessarily just look at, oh, we saved a shitload of money.
That's right.
Yeah, but what about our NPS? What about our our scores?
That's right. Look at all of those and weigh those against that last 2 quarters of cost reduction.
Right.
Maybe that math ain't so good after all. And I think the one bright spot, I think, are where companies are not just paying lip service, but are truly harnessing that notion that we've been dealing with my entire career, which is, hey, have the discipline to gather all the data, right, that a customer is willing to give you holistically, right? Harness it, right, in a way that will allow you to drive real value, right? Whether that's recommendations, whether that's assistance, whether that's offers, right? Whether that, hey, okay, you really are paying attention, right? Like the hotel companies, for instance, have actually gotten pretty good at this, right?
Yep.
That's an industry that has done a good job of investing billions in harnessing data and really trying to go create value add, right, through experiences or offers or right, whatever. That's the one bright spot, I think, are the companies that are taking the technology around data aggregation and then putting it into way more real time, right, engagement channels. Again, whether that's at the hotel guest or at the check-in, at the website, in the e-commerce store, right, in the email, on the phone. I think that's the one bright spot out there is the people that are doing that really, really well. And that's all technology driven, right? Because I've got to harness all the data, right? Then I've got to go put it in this orchestration and activation layer. And then I've got to develop all the content, whether those are products or offers or right, whatever. And then I got to get them out, right, through a myriad, right, of customer experience, right, channels now. Some of which are social, some of which are mobile, some of which are digital, some of which are in person, some of which are in store. That's been a heavy, heavy lift. But the companies that have committed to that technology backbone to enable that, I think that's the bright spot of the whole customer experience technology impact vis-a-vis the negative spot, which I just articulated, which is using it as a cost lever rather than a CX lever. So, yeah.
It's a good, it's a real good way to sum up that topic. Like I said, we could definitely have a whole hour's discussion just on CX, but I want to be cognizant of time. And I got to ask you about earned media.
Yeah.
Right. So when you were at Cision, you literally helped shape how brands think about earned media.
Yes.
And PR. So fast forward to now, AI, influencers, declining trust in institutions, things like that. Where does Kevin Akeroyd see earned media fitting in the modern marketing mix?
I think it has never been more important, ever. I truly do. I'll use a personal anecdote, Steve, and like my wife, she's Mensa level IQ, super successful at Microsoft, graduated in the top universities. I mean, she's a sharp cookie, right? And she's been a power consumer, too much so. Look at my credit card bills. She's a power consumer. Pretty sophisticated, right, person out there, right? She puts more stock in this rating and review. I'm like, Christina, that review could be written in the library terminal at San Quentin prison. For all you know, yet you put more stock in that review from some anonymous stranger than you do in 50 years of established brand, right? And guess what? She's not alone. There's 2 billion of her out there, right? So because even the smart folks out there, never mind the masses that have allowed their brains to be last impression in, first impression out, right? The people that have made clickbait so successful, the people that have that 2-second, response, that, and then just given the overall erosion of trust in government, in healthcare, right? Certainly in corporate, right? In my neighbor, right? Et cetera. Trust as a currency has just never been harder to get and has never been more precious once you get it, right? As far as the influence it has up and down the customer life cycle. So I think it's more important than it ever has been. And it's on an incline. It's going to continue to go up. And therefore, I think that it continues to be perpetually underinvested in. That was my mission, as you know, right, Steve, when we were at Oracle. Salesforce, Oracle, and Adobe had the biggest marketing clouds on the planet. And by the way, they still do, right? But you look at all the budgets, right? The hundreds of billions of dollars spent in marketing and advertising. And what is it? Still like 95% of that is paid and owned, which are not trust, right? That's my brand telling you that I'm great, right? And the 5% is trusted influencers, right? Whether they're bloggers, whether they're ratings and reviews, whether they're analysts, whether they're thought leaders, you hearing me tell you KA is great versus somebody you trust and respect telling you that KA is great, never been more important, never been a higher premium, never been harder to achieve, right? And yet the investment hasn't followed. So I'm really kind of disappointed as a global set of really, really accomplished leaders that nod their head at that, understand it, but the investment and commitment just hasn't followed yet. And I really think that that's a problem. It's a problem. Paid media budgets have gone up, right? Owned media budgets have gone up. Earned media budgets have actually lost as a share of the overall mix. And I think that's a real problem.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Wow. Again, I could have tons of follow-up questions, but I want to just, again, be respectful of time. We're definitely I knew we were going to do part 2. You and I forget it.
I'd love to.
Okay. So the way I end each episode is my loyal listeners will know I do what's called the random 5. And I pull 5 very random questions from my big database.
Sure.
And it's just to get to know the guest.
Cool.
And this first one, I didn't do that. It just came up, but it's so you because you're like me, a sports fanatic.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the chance to trade places with any pro athlete for one game or event, living or dead. Who is it?
It's got to be Michael Jordan.
In any game.
Yeah. Yep.
Just to be able to feel what it
or sitting on his $6 billion bank account now.
Or that. Yeah.
Right. Or that too. But yeah, I think, my opinion that might be the most talented, unique athletic specimen we've ever seen as a human race. Yep. And to experience what that would be like, I think would be pretty cool.
That's very cool. Yeah. Okay. You're a big traveler.
Yep.
What's the best place you've ever been to, however, that no one ever asked you about? Or very few people what's a little off the beaten path?
The mud baths in Calistoga, California. Yeah. So for those of you that watch Suits, right? Lewis with his mudding, man, Lewis has got it figured out. He's enlightened. Mudding is no joke.
So noted. Okay. Next one, fill in the blank. Quote, most people would never guess that I blank. So what would most people never guess that Kevin Akeroyd, I
am a sci-fi fantasy geek.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I've known you how long? I never knew that.
Yeah.
See that? Perfect answer. Okay. Oh, I can't wait for this one. Oh my gosh. I didn't even read. I'm just reading. If Hollywood made a movie about your life, who's playing Kevin Akeroyd?
I've been told so many times that a young Ray Liotta.
Oh.
Yeah. I've heard that from 50 people over the last 10 years that a middle-aged Ray Liotta is who would play me. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah. Last question. When you do get downtime and when you're not watching sports, because the Lord knows you're like me, but what's your guilty pleasure TV show or movie?
Ooh.
Guilty pleasure now is the operative.
Yeah. I am a streaming content services, binger.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's so much good stuff on Amazon and on Paramount and on Netflix and on HBO. So hitting some admittedly trendy brain candy streaming show on one of those networks with a really good glass of wine, is probably my guilty pleasure, is just capitulating to the brain candy with a good glass of vino next to me.
They got to be hand in hand.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, listen, I knew this was going to fly by. I knew we were going to have a blast. Kevin Akeroyd, my friend, my brother, my mentor. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure to be on the show, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.